Oh, hello, good evening, internets, and welcome to our very first stream for Designers Talk, where
Good evening.
yeah, where a bunch of designers just sit down and talk about random game related stuff within the industry. Here with me tonight, and hopefully for many many nights to come, is Luke, aka Nera. Say hi to everybody.
Hello, Luke here, junior designer.
Yep.
Uh, Hope to give you some hot takes in the industry from a person fresh into it,
Yep.
and
Fresh off the
yeah,
pan.
looking forward to chat with you guys.
All right. So yeah, so this is our first stream together on this approach. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. If everyone can we have a few viewers here already tonight. That's great. If you can hear us well, how is the audio for everyone? Please let us know. There's a form in the comments. Before we begin, I just want to give a heads up. Like there is a form in the bottom. If you have questions, feel free to either use chat or list it in the form below. If you want to be a little bit more anonymous and anonymous. I have problems pronouncing that word. Can you pronounce it, Luke?
Anonymous.
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 Anonymous. I think I have a problem on that third syllable.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
MOUS.
Yeah. I think my brain just like fits up on like anonymous. Surprisingly, I don't have the same problem with synonym.
Synonym.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same
Okay.
kind of word.
Are we
Anyways.
just like going seeing if we can pronounce words now?
Anyways, but yes, interestingly, tonight's this show is also going to be the first time I'm actually doing an official podcast kind of thing. So this is actually listed as a podcast on YouTube. Hopefully that means that you can listen to us on YouTube Music if you're ever bored and like have nothing else to do. Anyways, right. So yeah, let's get right into it. The topic tonight is the Palworld patent suit. Specifically on patents, copyrights, and trademarks, because it's been something that's been on my mind for a very, very long time, and I have wanted to talk to somebody about it. Luke, unfortunately, you are that somebody, and everyone else out there tonight.
It's a pleasure. It's not unfortunate. I love talking to people about things.
All right. So for tonight, for those who don't know, a couple of months back, Nintendo basically laid a suit on the developers of Palworld, Pocket Pair. It is a suit that many of us had thought would have come long time ago, considering the degree of inspiration that you've taken out of Pokemon.
It's a very nice way of putting it.
Yes. But that suit never came. We thought, that suit never came for months. And then finally, out of the blue, I think it was sometime about a month or so ago or two, they landed a patent suit on Palworld. A couple of places covered it. Initially, when the news broke, they did not inform what those patents were, for reasons that I wasn't very clear of, and I'm still not very clear of. But recently, they finally clarified it. This Forbes article, which you can find a link inside the comment below, has it in detail, but I will read off for it for the benefit of anyone who just doesn't want to scroll off. Let me just bring it up. All right, so right here, it is a article by Paul Tassi, a senior contributor. I only bring this up because I have seen a lot of his articles, and for what it's worth, they've been reasonably well written. I've had a couple of articles where a lot of them are done by guys who can't really hide their bias, and it's not really nice. Yeah, so anyways, Paul Tassi here, and I'm going to read it verbatim, by the way. Several weeks ago, it was announced that after months of seemingly building a case, Nintendo was suing Pocket Pair, makers of Palworld, for some sort of unknown patent infringement, as I was saying earlier. Now we have more details on what exactly is going on, and this was posted in November 8th. It was just about a month ago at this point. Pocket Pair has just announced that Nintendo is demanding 10 million yen plus late payment damages from them. Paul goes on to say, I would not expect anyone to know this math offhand, but 10 million yen is about 66,000 USD. It's pocket change for Pocket Pair. That is not missing any zeros. And yes, this is Palworld, a game that sold 25 million copies across PC and Xbox as of June. In other words, that's pocket change, depending on what the late payment damage case may be. And usually, for obvious reasons, late payment damages wouldn't usually exceed the original one lah. Of course, not a practicing lawyer, not quite sure what the amount really can be in terms of caps. Where things get weird is that what patents were actually violated as the ones they are, as they are ones that most people have no idea Nintendo even owns, including Pocket Pair apparently. Specifically, he goes on to clarify, the first patent is about aiming and firing some sort of item towards a character in a field. It literally specifies that, triggering a combat state. The second patent is something about being able to capture creatures in the wild rather than just in a battle setting. The third patent is about riding creatures in an open world and transitioning between those creatures. For those who are curious to know, links to those patents are actually in the comments, the description of this video as well. They are sourced from Google Patents. So the details are all there, including the records, the chronological records of their filing, as well as when they were approved. I would also note that these patents are the JP patents only. The North American patents have not been approved yet, as far as I know. Right? So yeah. So granted, patents are pretty granular. These may get into more details specific than what we're seeing here. But yes, it does fundamentally seem like Nintendo is saying they cannot use the open world capture system or riding creatures in open world, which can't be right, or is so detailed only Palworld is violating it, and say any game with a horse or chocobo is not. Okay, I'm not going to go further any more than this because the rest is more or less Paul's personal opinions on this kind of thing, or assessment on this kind of thing. And I also want to add before we continue that the ordering of which the patents is listed on this article is a little bit off. The first patent that is listed on Palworld's website, the one that they did a public statement on, that this article is basing off, the first patent is specific to the capturing system, and then it's the second patent that is referring to the aiming system. All right, and then the third patent is correct, which is about riding creatures. So yeah. Now, since we're talking about patents here specifically, Luke, before we continue any more further, you're a fresh guy in the industry. Do you have any idea what the differences between patent, copyright, and trademark is?
Honestly, if you ask me what the differences between copyright, trademark, patents are, I can't really tell you. I just know that in general at least, right. For copyrighted stuff, it's kind of like intellectual property. Think like say the name Dark Souls, that's copyrighted. I think maybe it's trademarked. I'm gonna say copyrighted for now.
Right. So yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And patents well, my knowledge of patents aren't really in games. I know there's a couple out there, but I've never deep dived into understanding what patents are or what they aren't. So patents to me are like, the one that immediately comes to mind is motion camera, from the Edison and that other dude, which is so bad to say on stream right now because
we'll move on.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the only two. Then, so do you have any impressions of trademark itself then?
I would say it's the same as copyright.
Feels like the same to you, right?
I have a feeling you're gonna tell me otherwise. So,
well, right.
Educate me and our audience.
Okay. So like just for those who don't know, I have a pretty long history in sort of animation, comics, and games like industry by and large. So I had some time writing, working as an IP writer. Basically, what I do is that I'll write pitch decks for the studio I was working for, and basically we'll go like, oh yeah, this is what the story we're going to tell, this is the world we're going to tell it in, and all that kind of stuff. And as a part of that process of like, doing all this kind of stuff, you learn a little bit about how copyright is managed, and that's very specific to copyright. Now, once again, not a lawyer, just watched a lot of videos enough on this matter, but specifically, copyright is the protection of the expression of an idea, and is granted as soon as the expression is recorded in a tangible form. All right, so it's granted to you the instant you make it and it is visible to anybody else. So that's what I mean by a
Okay.
tangible form. Meaning that, let's say, for example, you had an idea in your head that says, let's say I want to draw a 7 foot tall gorilla for some reason. Yes, King Kong
Mhm.
exists. Let's assume that he doesn't. Let's move on.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And for some reason, your gorilla has, I don't know, butt for a face. We'll just go there. Butt face gorilla. I'm pulling stuff out of my caboose right now, right? So let's go with butt face gorilla. Right. So assume,
Okay.
for example, that you were trying to make, you drew a picture of a butt face gorilla. This expression of the idea of a butt face gorilla is yours. And the instant you drew it and you put it out somewhere, that means even if you just drew it on a piece of paper, it becomes expressed on a tangible medium, and therefore you have rights for it. Or I believe the latest ruling is 75 years by default. So from the point of creation, it is 75 years or until you die.
So does this, okay, just to poke some holes in that,
Mhm.
does this, or I guess get a better picture of what's happening here, would that constitute, say, a discussion between designers where you're penning things down in like a notebook
So
or
yeah,
drawing on paint and
right,
figuring stuff out from there?
correct. So that's a very, very good question. I think the lines get very blurry there. Because copyright has to be somewhat of the finished product, if I'm not mistaken. Like it needs to be publicly recognized as, oh, this is the finished expression of it. Whether sketches can be copyrighted, I have no idea. Once again, this is where like me not being a practicing lawyer kind of sucks.
We'll invite a lawyer next time.
Someday,
Lawyers out there.
someday, you know. Anyway, but you get the idea, right? Like, so basically, let's say, for
Yeah.
example, if you do a drawing, you post it up on internet, even without you doing any filing, this process is automated. Like, you automatically can say, oh yeah, hey, I own this copyright. Like, you own the copyright is automatically yours. Now, then some of you guys, if you hear this explanation, you're gonna go like, hey, then what are copyright lawyers supposed to be for? Why do copyright lawyers keep telling you to file for copyright, like, filing and stuff like that? And the reason for this is actually very simple. The point of this is that when you file for a copyright, you basically create a version of it that's safeguarded, like in the filings of the lawyer. It's basically saying that if anyone comes here and disputes you over copyright, your lawyer can bring up that file and say, hey, as of this date, my client was the first person to express this idea in this specific way and form. So you don't have to dig through God knows how many years of like hard disk data and all that kind of stuff, or like look for your sketches and try to find some way to authenticate the dates and shit like that. Your lawyer would have validated everything, there's dates signed and chopped and everything. So it makes filing, or like people, if anyone tries to make a claim against you, a lot easier for you to defend yourself. And that's
fundamental. So it's basically like keeping an archive log of things.
Exactly.
So you can go, aha, it's here.
Correct. And it's important. It's not only just archive; it is validated archives. It's the same reason why, like your lawyer basically says, oh yeah, correct, exactly. He will go like, oh yeah, I authenticated. There's a chop there. It says, oh yeah, this is sealed during what day and stuff like that. So basically, when anyone tries to make any claims, it becomes a lot easier.
Got it.
Yeah, and
okay,
of course,
wait. Sorry to cut you off. This kind of just popped into mind because junior dev and all that.
Yeah.
I do use a lot of Creative Commons things. Yeah. How does that play into the whole copyright system?
Creative Commons are, if I'm not mistaken, I need to double check this one because I actually know this one. I actually picked this up at one point as well. Creative Commons, if I'm not mistaken, has a rule that says that you cannot do it cannot be for commercial products, if I'm not mistaken. So the rule is that there are 3 exceptions to it, if I'm not mistaken. And once again, like my memory on this is a little faded. This is why you practice, right? It's specifically the 3 exceptions that are carved out are 1 for parody. So basically, if you're making fun of something, you're perfectly allowed to make use of the original source material. Number 2, if it's news, so basically newscasters and people like us to some level right now, like Paul can't come back and say, hey, you just read my entire article verbatim, and like I want money for it. That's a thing. Though whether you consider what we are doing here in news, I mean, I read news, so it's like
Infotainment.
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, and then number 3 is education. So I think we fall into the education. We would fall into the education one. Exactly. We'll fall into the education side of things, right?
Okay.
So these 3 exceptions. So these 3 exceptions, if you're doing these 3 exceptions, it's fine. Anything else, I think the rule is oh wait, no, sorry. My mistake. Copyright has 3 exceptions for fair use, and these 3 exceptions are the fair use ones. Creative Commons, on the other hand, is basically stuff that you can use on the condition that is that I think there is there are rules that basically say that there is enough change to it or something like that. Oh God, I really can't remember.
Here's where I got you, because recently I've been going through Creative Commons things to in use for my projects and stuff. So the three most common ones, the ones that I've seen and I've read through to understand what I gotta do to use them, is Creative Commons 0, Creative Commons 3, and Creative Commons 4. So in Creative Commons 0, it's basically like open source, where they just put it out there. You can take it, change whatever you want with it. You don't have to give attribution, and you can use it for any kinds of projects, even commercial ones. CC3, Creative Commons 3, you do have to give attributions, but outside of attributions, everything else is free game.
So basically, as long as you say like, oh hey, I this is sourced from this guy.
It's sourced from here, give them credit. It's all good. Creative Commons 4 is that, with the addition of you cannot change, or you cannot edit the base form, the file itself into something else. For example, in my case, I use a CC for sound effect, right, for a project, and I wasn't allowed to snip it, whatever, because that's part of CC4. But CC3, I could do all of that. In CC0, no attributions required.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's a little tidbit there for junior game devs out there too, so you don't get into trouble making your stuff using Creative Commons.
Okay, so on that note, since we brought up like Creative Commons and all that kind of stuff, are you familiar? Crap! I suddenly can't remember the term. There's a proper term for this, and I should know this off the top of my head. I'm growing old. Mickey just became part of this recently. I really suddenly can't remember what's the term for it.
Oh, is it the one where they don't lose their copyright protection or something like that?
Basically the term, there's a proper term for it. It's crap, I need somebody. Let me just do this.
Hello, Mr. Google, please help.
Yes. Public domain,
Chat,
that's the one.
Guys,
there we
public
go.
domain.
There we
go.
Are you familiar with the term public domain?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about it, seen it around.
Yeah.
I don't think any IP I've been alive for has experienced that until Mickey Mouse.
There is actually a surprising amount of stuff that actually hits public domain that we're not necessarily conscious about. That's the thing.
Even for big stuff, like
Mickey Mouse is one of the most iconic ones that we know of. But there's a very interesting one that I think is worth looking at. Do you know anything about the Sherlock Holmes one? It's fantastic.
Not a big Sherlock Holmes person.
I'm just going to make a quick mention of this because I don't want to bury the lead. But basically, there is actually 2 sets of copyright for Sherlock Holmes. And strangely enough, it's probably the same way it is true for LOTR, Lord of the Rings, as well. There's a lot of very interesting and different stories about this, but like basically, Sherlock Holmes has a set of stories that was originally published, and then there was a set of stories that I think were his notes or something like that. And basically, because they were released at different times, the family still holds rights to the notes, but the original set of stories that were published are part of the public domain.
Wait, does that mean Lord of the Rings is part of public domain?
No, it's not. No. Lord of the Rings isn't yet. Lord of the Rings isn't yet, but Lord of the Rings has a slightly different one. What happens is that for Lord of the Rings, the original movies are still owned by the studio that like made them, if I'm not mistaken, or is it transferred over to whoever bought them already? What Amazon has is only the rights to very specific subset. I'm not a Lord of Rings. I'm not a huge Lord of Rings super nerd, so I do apologize for this. But like basically, it's equivalent to sort of the indexes of the IP. So what happens is that they have enough of the IP to call Rings of Power Lord of the Rings kind of thing, but they don't have rights to like characters like Legolas and like the core cast of Lord of the Rings.
You know, I don't know where it got into my head. I thought Lord of the Rings was way older than 1969. What? It's that new?
Well, the guy was writing it while World War II was happening.
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, it should be coming up soon.
In case you didn't notice, yeah, in case you didn't notice, the troops of Mordor are just basically Nazis.
Oh, so it's Star Wars but fantasy.
I guess if you want to call it that. But
Isn't okay. Let's not tangent too hard into this. But
like I feel like chronologically speaking, Star Wars is more like Star Wars is Lord of the Rings but sci-fi.
Oh, I think a lot of people are gonna be real upset about it.
But anyway. Yeah, this is our first podcast, man. We're just like hitting the ground running, man. Like just throwing punches left, right, center. Anyway. So all right. Anyway, so we're done with copyright. Let's talk about patents. Patents, on the other hand, is about protecting innovation and mythology. Very specifically, it's like, say for example, yeah.
You say mythology?
Mythology. How you do things.
Like, oh, methodology.
Methodology. Sorry, my bad.
Got it. I heard mythology. I'm like, so, like, Hercules. Okay, gotcha. Methodology. All right, okay, let's hear it.
Clearly, my fat Asian tongue has a problem. Anyways, okay, so yes, methodology. Oh, God. Yet another word I can't pronounce live. Anyway, okay. So methodology, and it's about those kind of things. So basically, let's say, for example, if you have an invention, the most common use of patents most people think about is like, recording ownership over inventions. Say, for example, if for some reason you have a electronic back scratcher, right? So you want to file a patent for it, and you can. But then what happens is that the patent office will go, unlike copyright, where it's about an expression, so expression is very subjective, you can do it any way you want, as long as you can prove it, it's yours, right? Patents, on the other hand, because a lot of it has to do with invention and innovation and protecting that innovation and invention of yours, like the rights to monetize and make use of it in any way that you see fit. What happens is that the patent office will usually ask you to define specifically what your invention is and why is it different from anything else around. So
hold on, I actually have a question now that we're on that line of specific thinking.
Right.
So would you say Pikachu is copyrighted?
Correct.
But not patented?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So Pikachu as a creature, as a design, and like as a creative design is copyrighted but not patented.
Okay.
Unless somehow, now here's the kicker, right? So let's say, for example, if somehow some biotech firm manages to genetically engineer a yellow mouse rodent that shoots lightning out of his cheeks, that genetic methodology in which they create that specific species of creature, that can be patented.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow-up question, because it just came to mind. Yeah. Okay, so in Final Fantasy, there is the Mikote race, cat girls and stuff. How is that copyrightedly different from other types of cat girls?
Because they call it Mikotes. And any other form of expression, like, for example, things like defining features, like, say, the clothing or the shape of the eyes or something like that, like, as long as it's identifiably different, that becomes a thing. We will go into something extra, which is the trademark one, which goes into closer to what you're talking about, believe it or not. And this is where trademark comes in a little bit. We'll go into that one a little bit.
All right, let's go back to patent
Yeah, let's go
definition
to
instead
shortcut
of
patents
bringing
one.
it back
So,
to copyright.
right. So what happens is patents will usually, like, patents will ask you to define, hey, how is this different? Or, they ask you to define it, and then specifically, how is it different?
Mm-hmm.
Patent offices will always reject anything that is overly general, because if it's overly general, it becomes abusive. So, like, say for example, hey, if you try and file a patent for a cylindrical container, for example, right? A cylindrical container literally describes like every glass out there, right? Like every cup out there, right? And so the patent office is going to go say like, no, there's no way I'm going to give you this patent. This is way too general, right? Like if I give you this patent, then everyone is going to have to pay you money. That's insane. That doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what basically, like, so patent offices usually filter out these kind of things, and normally patents are very, very specific. Yeah. So
Okay, just
yeah.
a second. Do you remember that YouTube channel a while back that caught a lot of flack for either trying to copyright, patent, or trademark React?
React
It's the one where
no.
that X kids or X people react to something,
Mm-hmm.
and they tried to one of those three the term react. Do you remember that?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So
I'm trying to find it. I can't find it.
No, it's fine. So that's the thing, and that's exactly it. So once again, you're actually talking about something that's closer to a trademark, but I'll get into that a little bit. But basically, things that are too general get automatically denied.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and very specifically, you can't patent terms because words cannot be patented. Like you can't say like I patent the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, right? Like you can't do that.
Okay, but everyone ties it to Mary Poppins,
Yeah,
right?
like, but because it's expressed in that space and expressed in this specific way, so at most you can copyright it, but you can't patent it because it's not a methodology.
Okay.
Right. So yeah. So it's specifically a methodology. So now, all cards on the table. Patents have its problems because what happens is that the filter for patents, there are actually two filters for patents. One filter is, the first filter is obviously the patent office itself. Like I said, patent offices usually are there to filter out like things that are overly broad. They demand a certain level of specificity so that they allow you to protect your invention without hampering other people's innovation. That's sort of a caveat behind the patent office, right? So that's the usually first layer. The second layer of protection comes in the form of legal sort of like legal action. And I know it sounds like it's the ultimate version of it, but this is basically what happens. And just so you know, if you look at the schedule on Google, right, for the patent filing, there's actually a small period between when it's filed and when it's approved. And the reason why it's there, right, is because what happens as a matter of practice is that patent offices would put out any patent that's filed, that they basically go, okay, you have passed our filter, and now we're going to put it out there so that people can see whether they want to complain about it. If anyone wants to like claim and say, hey, no, this is actually already invented, or this is already mine, or I invented this, or something like that.
Oh, I thought you were talking to chat for a second
Oh,
there.
no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
It was an example. Got it.
I'm giving you an example. So normally what happens is that usually, so as a first filter, like I said, like first filter is usually a patent office itself will say, hey, you need to be more specific until it satisfies them. And then after that, they put it out there and people are allowed to dispute the patent filing. Then after that, it gets granted. Once it's been granted, you go into the only way to actually like dispute patent is through legal claims. Now, this is the part that gets really interesting. The reason why I say this is because patents are sort of like general understandings. Like basically, it's because patents normally is filed by a person, a party. So it's basically their definition of what they think is a unique thing about their thing. You know, the patent office does not go around asking in other members of the industry, going like, "Hey, do you agree with this? Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this?" All they do is they put it out there and say, "Hey, no one seems to be complaining. Okay, we'll give it to you." You know. So what happens is that
it's so flawed.
I think it's a human problem, but let's move on a little bit. So then what happens is that when legal action is taken, either by one party or the other, patents then become like they finally are put to the test. You know the old saying like, if you you should not be afraid of having your faith tested.
Sure.
Yeah, it's the same with patent filings. Basically, when patent filings are legal dispute happens over patent filing, like people will be basically going line by line, and then what happens is that this is the point when like people on both sides will argue over the patent properly, and then the judge will decide, oh, this patent can be upheld, this part of the patent can be upheld, this part of the patent cannot. You know, and then basically the patent usually walks out more full of holes than it goes in, because there's more scrutiny at this point, and like more people who are actively saying, hey, I want this patent to be like, people who are actually vested interest going like, I want this patent to die kind of thing, will usually like will go into this process. So that's usually what this is what usually goes on with patents. However, and at the same time, like for more flaws about patents, I strongly recommend people to look up John Oliver's segment on patent trolls. Yeah, he actually did one. It covers it really well. His explanation is really, really sharp. If you feel like my words are not convincing, or you feel like I didn't explain it as well, please go watch his. I recommend it all the way. Last week tonight, by the way, in case you're not familiar with his work. But yeah, so that's patents.
You might want to put that link into chat so people can
I'll
go do that for themselves. I'll send you the.
I think you guys can like Google that one later. That one's like super easy. John Oliver's like huge. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it's easier to just fit it in there if they want to go look at it.
Okay. Anyway, so do you have any questions about patents before we move on to trademarks?
No, patents actually one of the more cut and dry ones of the three. So let's go on to trademark and have my mind blown again.
So trademark and copyright is the one that most people get confused with. And trademark is specifically, it needs to be filed. Trademark, as the name implies, are the marks in which you trade in. It is meant, it is parsed.
Parsed?
It is framed as a form of consumer protection. It's really weird because it's usually the company that takes action, never the consumer. Like when there's a trademark dispute, it's usually the company that takes action, never the consumer. But it's filed as a consumer protection, a method of consumer protection.
I mean, I can see both ways, right? You don't want consumers to be tricked into using something else.
That's it. No, but that's exactly what trademark is for. Trademark is meant to protect the consumer from people trying to pretend to be other people. So basically, if you buy a pair of sneakers with the name Adidas on it, you know you're actually buying Adidas and not some rando sweatshop in Turkmenistan or something. I'm making up country names now.
Little do they know it's about the same.
Anyway, but yeah. So the trademark is really there. Trademark's really interesting because not only do you have to file it, trademark is also limited to industry. You actually have to file specific to the industry that you're in. So basically, for example, Nike might be filed for sports apparel, t-shirts, and shoes and all that kind of stuff, right? But they might not have, say, Nike fried chicken. So an F&B shop calling itself Nike without the tick can call itself Nike. It might, if you start using the tick, then Nike would start saying, hey, wait, but that icon is a Nike trademark, because people, once you see the word name of Nike and that tick, you're going to start thinking that Nike did this F&B shop, this fried chicken, which it clearly didn't, you know? So that's what trademark is supposed to prevent from happening. And so filing for trademark is supposed to do that for you.
So, question: how generic can the iconography be before it's not protected by trademark anymore?
The rule for trademark is very interesting. There are some trademark disputes, but it's kind of really weird. So like the rule is like you need to prove that you've been using it in trade or actively use it in trade. So basically you can file for trademark, but if you stop using it, it automatically expires over a period of time. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the period of time is. So yeah, so it's a really reasonable rule because it's like, hey, you're not using it. Why? You know, like so this is just really to stop people from like, oh yeah, I have everything, all the trademarks, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So okay. Adidas, since we're talking about it,
Yep.
has a new logo and an old one, you know, the 3 stripes, and then now it's like the flower.
Yep.
Or maybe it's in reverse. I'm not sure which is which anymore.
I think the 3 stripes is the old one, but anyway.
Yeah. But okay, so if Adidas continues to not use those 3 stripes, is there a point in the future where another true company can use those 3 stripes?
In theory, yes. In theory.
In theory, okay.
Yeah, in theory. The question then becomes, do you want to fight Adidas for it?
Yikes, probably not. They would sue my pants off.
So first and foremost, you need to know whether the trademark's expired. That's like number one, right? Then number two is you need to know whether like Adidas is truly not using it in trade at all and all that kind of stuff. Like people recognize it, but like, hey, no, they're not using it anymore. And like, if you're using the 3 stripes without the name Adidas, can you really get away with it? I think that becomes like the real test, like the real thing that you have to really decide in court, kind of thing. But yeah, that's at least from my understanding.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so
can't wait to see the next 3 stripes non-Adidas shoe brand.
I know, right? So with this, I should probably highlight also as well. Trademark is also local. I don't know about patents though. I'll be
wait, they're local?
Yeah. So basically, if you're you have to file for trademark in each individual country, like specifically.
That's crazy. So there's a trademark for Adidas in Singapore, USA.
Yep.
China.
So MNCs like those really big brands usually have their trademarks like just registered everywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
And usually trademarks are only applicable to if I'm not mistaken, like it requires that you are doing trade in that country.
Okay.
Yeah, so once again, like this is because once again, like trademark is always about like, oh, how do you recognize that the business that you're working with is actually real, you know, the business that it claims to be and all that kind of stuff. That's what trademark's meant to do.
So let's kind of roll back time a little bit, right? Let's say when McDonald's was first getting established and stuff, and they were starting to expand internationally. What if they went to a country with a already locally registered McDonald's?
Oh, that would be a fantastic question. I have no answer for you. But I know of a story where McDonald's tried to fight somebody for the prefix Mac.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know where this happened in?
Don't tell me Singapore.
No, it's fucking Scotland, man. Like, where else would you think it would happen in?
I thought Singapore because
no.
actually relevant.
So what happened was that because I think the guy was doing a bar or something, and
a bar?
Yeah, he was like,
place?
Yeah. So he was like, I need to check this up. It's an old story. I really can't remember it that well. But if I'm not mistaken, so what happened was like there was a bar owner who called his bar like Mac something, and then like McDonald's basically said, hey, because we're an F&B company and you're doing alcoholic stuff, this is potentially damaging to our trademark. So they tried to sue the guy, and they basically, the claim was that like because of the prefix Mac, you'd think it's a McDonald's thing, and then the guy came back like, dude, Mac is in my name.
I mean, that's how McDonald's started. McDonald's was their name.
Correct, right.
The
So
McDonald brothers. Yeah.
right, so the whole suit came about, if I'm not mistaken. I swear, like I'm doing this where I'm pulling a lot of old articles that I've read over the years, and I'm quite sure somebody in like comments after this podcast goes out or this podcast is done is gonna go like, oh yeah,
We're
this
gonna
guy's just
get
full of shit.
schooled in there.
We're gonna get schooled in the comments, man. But
Yeah.
but yes, but if I'm not mistaken, that is a whole thing on its own.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating
I kind of want to Google that just to see
how true
what
or how full of shit I am, right?
No, not how full of shit you are. I just want to know what the outcome of that was.
All right. Anyways, okay. So now with a sort of a better understanding of the differences between like copyright, patent, and trademark, right? Let's get back to the lead, which is really about this patent lawsuit that that Nintendo has filed against Pocket Pair. Luke, before we go in deep into the specifics of the patent suit itself, what are your quick thoughts? Like, why do you think that like Nintendo didn't try with a copyright suit?
Sorry, could you to repeat that real quick? I was looking up that specific McDonald's thing you're talking about. Also, I have the thing pulled up here, and just to real quick inform you and our audience. So, like from an article on BBC, let's do our citations. 7th August 2019. Has lost its exclusive claim to the MEC trademark on some of its food products in the EU after a dispute with an Irish fast food chain.
Irish, sorry, my bad. It's Irish, not Scottish. I'm so gonna get like killed on the comments.
The MEC prefix specifically was done on a product from the fast food chain called the MEC Bully.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, that is all.
Thank you.
For those who are very interested in knowing the outcome of that. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, back to our conversation.
So in the right ballpark, off by like enough to not have a touchdown. Anyways. All right. So anyways, as I was saying, like when Palworld first came out, everybody thought Nintendo was going to file for copyright. Now, with your current understanding,
the current understanding, yes, copyright. I do believe copyright should have happened. Really? Some of those designs, you know, I personally would say would have led me to believe that Palworld was a side product of Pokemon.
Yep. So
like the ones that come to mind, right? Like right off the bat, is Anubis.
Right.
Reminds me of what's the blue color, very popular with a lot of people, and I'm gonna get crucified for not knowing it. Lucario?
Look, I'm an old school Pokemon guy. Like it's 151 and I'm done.
Okay.
Anyway.
You know, Lucario, if you search him up and then you search Anubis from Palworld, they're basically the same.
Yeah. Look, there are videos out there that have literally done this comparison. I'm not going to like please go do that amount of homework. I can't do everything for you. Like this this is supposed to be a podcast. We're supposed to be visual, man. Sorry, we're supposed to be audio, man. Yeah, we're supposed to be mostly audio here. We're not going to compare stuff on the spot. But yeah.
Yes.
But I do want to like but I would I disagree with you on that one, believe it or not. I actually thought that would be the case. For a very long time when I first saw it, I was like, holy shit, this should not be legal. The one that I thought was going to be the one that broke the camel's back was Wooloo, actually.
Wooloo?
Yeah. So there's a Pokemon in and yes, I know this exceeds the 151 thing I just said, but like there's a Pokemon in the latest series called Wooloo, which looks identical to the sheep Palworld thing that I forgot what its name is called.
Let me get the name for you.
But basically it's like identical to the point that it's almost sorry?
Lamball.
Yeah, Lamball. Yeah,
I like those dudes.
It's about as the naming is about as the naming is about as inspired as a matchstick.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Anyway,
Cativa, the pink cat looking one.
Anyways, So I thought Wooloo Lamball was going to be the kicker. But here's the thing. Copyright is such a thing, right? Where because it's specific to the expression of an idea, as long as the two of them are like when you put it side by side, are noticeably different, like you can tell that they're two different things, it no longer counts.
What's the tolerance on that?
I know that's really subjective, and that's actually why Nintendo didn't even bother with it. Because it is so subjective, right? And because when you put it side by side, you can tell that they are different creatures. There is an argument in Pocket Pair's favor as a result.
Technicalities.
Yes,
I want you to keep that word in mind. Technicalities. It's gonna come up later.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that this is a technicality because you have to sort of respect where this is coming from, because you don't want a situation, right, where another person, like say some like indie company or anybody else for that matter, going around drawing random sheep inspired creatures in the style that is Pokemon because hey, they might be a fan of Pokemon and stuff like that, right? And then they put it out in a game, and then Nintendo says, hey, wait, that looks like it's so inspired by Wooloo. I should have rights to that. I should have copyrights to that. Like, and then they sue the crap out of you for money from that. You know?
I wonder if Marvel has something that looks something similar to Batman.
Oh, there's a long and funny story on that one. You should go and check it out. There's a reason why characters like Deadpool and Deathstroke both exist. If you've never like seen that, there's a history behind that.
No, that's a great comparison, actually.
And on a relevant note, one word that recently hit public domain, and it's no longer trademarked anymore. Superhero.
Oh, okay. I thought it was gonna be Superman.
No, superhero. Superman is almost reaching public domain, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I was almost right.
Yeah. Superman is almost reaching public domain, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
So
just because, see, I asked that because, right, specifically the question that came into my mind was, if let's say Marvel designed Batman Beyond and DC did original Batman, would that be far enough away to be copyrighted by copyright law different?
Right. So I think once again, I think this is where the lawyers would need to really jump in on. But I think, like, first and foremost, the fact that you're doing the whole Bat family thing, which is so heavily iconic, like
we don't have to call him Batman Beyond, just could be Man Bat Beyond.
Oh, do you know that Man Bat's also a Batman thing?
Yes, I know. I know that one.
I feel like it's relevant.
Okay. Let's imagine a timeline where Man Bat wasn't a thing. It's a hypothetical. Hypothetical.
So
does that work with copyright law?
So once again, it comes when the characters are similar, but like you once again can identifiably tell them apart. Copyright wouldn't kick in, and this is actually where the problem really is. At least for Nintendo, in the purpose of this suit, it's difficult for anyone to hit somebody else on copyright unless they specifically use that exact thing. Yeah. So, but on that note, you know what's very interesting thing? And by the way, this is me going to talk about the quiet part out loud. By the way, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. Do you know? Do you know artist alleys? You know when you go to events, right? When you go to events. You know artist alleys?
Oh yeah. I know those. I bought a bunch of stuff at Gamescom.
Strictly speaking, that's copyright infringement.
Oh no. Is it really?
It is. Because strictly speaking, as long as you're monetizing off somebody else's intellectual property, that is copyright infringement. So when you say, for example, buy a poster of Pikachu or something like that, that is not licensed by Nintendo, the person just profited off Nintendo's IP without Nintendo's permission, and therefore it is copyright infringement.
Wow.
So technically,
I know why they wouldn't go after that, right? It's like soft power, but like like damn,
look,
that's crazy to think about.
So I feel like it's important because we're talking about like a lawsuit here specifically. I feel like it's important to contextualize this, where like if you follow everything to the letter of the law, this is where it gets like squint, squint, you know, kind of thing.
I want audience keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyways, um, I lost the lead a little bit. Where was I going with this? Oh, right, we were talking about like why copyright. Yeah, right. Why copyright? Why not? Why not copyright for Nintendo? So yeah, so but because like there is distinct enough features that you can tell them they're two separate creatures. Nintendo has less ground to stand on when it comes to copyright. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So so now let's come into patent. Now patents on the other hand, right? Like I mentioned earlier, you need to be really, really specific. Like you need to be able to break it down and say very definitively saying what every part of it is supposed to be, that like this is your pattern, what's so unique about what you're doing, because it has to be methodology, like that it needs to be protected so that no one else can profit off your innovation or your invention. You know, like so you can properly monetize it for yourself and no one else can do that. That's what patent protection is supposed to be for. Right. And so like with that in mind, the patent, we go back to the article that Forbes brought up. The first patent they talked about is about aiming and firing some item towards a character in a field. Have you read the patent yourself, Luke?
As in the Google patent stuff, or just
the Google
okay,
patent.
No, I've skimmed it through really quickly.
No problem.
But you know, all the legal jargon kind of makes my eyes glaze over a little bit. It's like, what is happening here, man?
I'll be honest with you. I don't consider it legal jargon. I actually consider that a technical design doc. No, it's a technical design doc. That's how I see it.
Okay.
Because if you read through it, right, they specify what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And one thing that I didn't realize before this was, in the beginning of it, they specify like, hey, while similar systems might exist elsewhere, this is how we are different.
Is there a section for that?
Yes, that's literally in front, on top of it, every step of the way. So let me give you a quick example here. Yeah, let me just grab a quick link from one of the ones that I saw. Sorry, yeah, I actually need to pull this up from one of the links that I had. Give me a short while, yeah. Let me pick the one I like the most. It's the let's go into the Nintendo throw a Pokeball patent. So by the way, I gave all of the patents that like are there a small nickname on my own end. It's in the descriptions below. So if you want, you can just check it out.
Okay.
Just pull that up. This is really, really interesting. So
I see that. I see the
now, right?
distinctions and why this is specifically different.
So if you go down, they say here there's this paragraph here that says, conventionally, there are game programs in which a player character throws a ball at a character in a virtual space, capturing the character and setting it in the player character's possession. For example, see non-patent document 1, which is basically an example of what you're talking about, right? Catching wild Pokemon, which is like where the line is. This is basically like them proving some stuff. However, in the game program disclosed in the above mentioned non-patent document, the ball can only be thrown to capture characters during battle. And the ball cannot be thrown on the field, meaning that it can only be done inside a specific definition of a battle, and it cannot be thrown into an open space for no apparent reason. That's the rough definition of it. Therefore, an object of the present invention, which is specifically what they're trying to protect with the patent, is to provide a game program, a game system, a game device, and a game processing method that enables a player character to perform various types of actions on a field in a virtual space. To achieve the above objective, the present invention may adopt, or for example, the following configuration, and there's a bunch of other things in the bottom. Right? So and so on. Sorry?
Can I give my take on it just from the little
go ahead
glimpse
first. Go ahead first.
It falls flat on its face.
Right. Go ahead.
Okay, so the specific words that are jumping out to me that this falls flat, right, is the section where it says during the ball can only be thrown to capture characters during battle, and the ball cannot be thrown on the field.
Right.
Palworld, you can throw it in the field, you can throw it out of battle.
No. So No. So that's what they say is the innovation that they did. And because what happens is that Nintendo is saying that this is the innovation that we are trying to protect, and this is where PAL will infringe on that innovation.
But it doesn't.
How does
Based
it?
on those highlights there, it's you can throw the Pokeball not in battle. This one highlights during battle.
No. That's what.
And
No. But that's what they say. The previous ones does not allow for. That means
sorry,
the innovation specific to this one is to say you can being able to do it outside of battle is the innovation that they're trying to protect. They say it's very specific. At the present, invention relates to a program. Conventionally, there are game programs in which a player character that throws a battle at a character in a virtual space, capturing the character and setting it in player's character possession. And then, however, in a game disclosed, which means he's talking about the conventional example that they gave. Right? It means the conventional. That means the commonly available ones currently. Okay. The ball can only be thrown to capture characters during battle, and the ball cannot be thrown on the field. That is what is available currently. So that's not what the innovation is. Therefore, an object of the present invention is to provide a game program, okay, that enable a player character to perform various types of actions on a field in a virtual space. This is not specific enough. So
field in virtual space,
correct.
not during battle.
Yeah. So it's outside of battle. So that's why this is where they say like this is the innovation that they're trying to protect.
So just to clarify, the statements that I just made were about the conventional way most games do.
Correct.
And the distinctions here is that in this version of it, you can throw it outside of battle, and you can throw it on the field. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, I still think it falls flat, but go ahead.
Correct. So that's what they're claiming to be the thing, right? Now, there's a bunch of stuff here, and they actually clarified a few things. There's one thing that actually stands up for them, because they said like to achieve the above objective, the present invention may adopt, for example, the following configuration. So as an example, they say like, oh, this is how we would do it, and this is basically a technical document which specifies, say, for example, one for configuration example for the game program of the present invention causes a computer. Okay, I'm not going to read that part because it's basically like how computers work. Right? But specifically, it says here, in the first mode, causes the computer to determine an aiming direction in a virtual space based on a second operational input. Right? All right? And so it needs to be a second button that you press, causes it to determine the direction in which you aim. It causes the character fire an item. First mode causes the character to aim, and then with a second operational input, that means you press the second button, causes the player character to fire an item that affects a field character placed in a virtual field, in the virtual space in the aiming direction based on a third operational input. Okay, basically you use a third input to aim, you use the second input to fire. Okay. And then when the item is fired at a location where the field character is placed, it gives an effect associated with the item to the field character, meaning that when you, like, depending on what you fire, it has a different effect.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And in the second mode, causes the computer to determine an aiming direction based on the second operational input, meaning that you go into a second mode and then you can sort of aim and like it does a thing. It causes the character to fire a combat character, and causes the character to fire a combat character that will engage in combat in the aiming direction based on the third operational input. Meaning that it will fire a character, and then like basically the thing that you fire has to create a character, and it will fight in that general direction. By the way, I also want to flag out, this is my second time reading this pattern. I think it has been updated. I'm not sure. Because I've read a version of it that like the wording is different, but it might be because of where I sourced it.
Can they update it like that?
So like I did mention, like when you talk to the office, they will ask, they say like, oh, we have a problem this filing, please update your filing, that kind of thing. Like it's before it is considered accepted.
Okay.
You understand what I mean, right?
Yeah, the challenge period. Got it.
Exactly. No. It's before the challenge period. It's basically the office themselves saying, I have problems with this description. You need to be either, you need it to be like this, or you need to be more specific, things like that.
Okay. Got it.
So yeah. So, as described above, by switching between the first mode and the second mode, it is possible to cause the player character to perform a number of different actions, such as firing an item that affects a player character at a targeted field on the a targeted field character on the field. Means it has to be a character on the field somewhere, and firing a combat character that engages in combat. Firing a combat character that engages in combat with a field character on the field. So basically, right, by inputting an operation to cause the player character to fire an item at a targeted field character on the field, meaning that basically the act of throwing a Pokeball specifically, and specifically to this filing, it doesn't have to be a ball. I made this misunderstanding before. Basically, if you fire an object that results in a character that lands within a field character, which means a character inside the battlefield, and the two characters start fighting, that is what this pattern is supposed to protect.
I know we're not, patent lawyers or anything, right? But like just as you're reading through that, two specific instances of things come to mind.
Right.
So they're from Overwatch of all games. The first one sounds like Anna's grenade, where you throw it and it affects the people around.
No. So
field characters around the space. Okay. And the second one sounds like Bob, where you throw an arrow and Bob runs out and fights.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. It does not apply to grenades because that does not result in that's not a that the thing that's fired is not a character.
It doesn't say it has. It doesn't say the firing thing is a character.
It has to be. And firing a combat character that engages in combat with a field character on the field. There's this line here.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying, if you split up the first version,
you can't.
Oh, it has to be
taken as
everything at once.
Yeah, it has to be taken all at once. That's why you can't cut out a portion of it, because otherwise it's too. Then every individual sentence is too generic.
But here it's like it's describing two mechanics that happens in basically every game.
No, it has to be that specific combination of mechanics.
Chunk of text.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You have to read everything at once. So yeah, but you are right on one thing. It potentially falls into Bob's one. Like based on your description of Bob, I've not played Bob by the way, but
No, it's Ash Ultimate, where you summon a character out to go fight.
Oh, sorry, my bad. But yes, correct.
No, it's fine.
So I don't play League. I suck. Anyway.
No, Overwatch.
Oh my god, it's even worse. Anyway. So, Anyways. So yes, so that is how. But once again, you're getting really into how specific this filing really has to be, like why this needs to be this specific, and why, like us right now talking about, like where the similarities really are and where the concerns really are coming from. Like this is why this is meaningful. This conversation is meaningful, right? Like it really is the fact that because they specifically said as an example is firing an item that affects a field character at a targeted field character on the field, and firing a combat character that engages in combat with a field character on the field by inputting an operation to cause that the player character to fire an item at a targeted field character on the field. So this is the kind of stuff that they're basically saying. So like first and foremost, there's two firing modes. And then you need to, like, there's a bunch of different actions, including this bunch of stuff. And once again, you can argue whether these bunch of stuff are just treated to be examples, because it's like, oh, what if it falls outside of your example, right? Does it still fall under this pattern, right?
Exactly.
But the point is that these examples are meant to illustrate what the pattern is supposed to protect. So if it falls under it, reasonably, it would not be covered under pattern, but debatable, fairly debatable, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so from a lot of what I'm getting, right, a lot of patent law, copyright law, trademark law is all dependent on the ability of a lawyer to convince the judge of whether it falls under the protections of the case or not under the protections of the case. So
two things there. It's both judge or jury. I think there are some cases where this is a jury decided stuff. I'm once again not a lawyer, can't tell. That's number one. Number two, it's really not as subjective as you might describe it, because there's a few operational caveats that needs to be there. Like basically, the judge is not an impartial. Sorry, the ruling on these kind of protections are not meant to be impartial. It's going to sound really stupid, but like that's really technically how it's supposed to be, because there is always a public interest on these kind of rulings that needs to be taken into consideration. So as a rule, let's say, for example, like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to patent, one of the big things that is always taken into consideration is whether it it stifles innovation, right? So when you go in there, you can make a case, a very clear case to say, look, this is way too restrictive. This is beyond just trying to protect their own rights to use this methodology that they have. It actually stops people from innovating. You know, so once you can make that argument and make that one clear, it becomes very easy. And this is also actually why, for a large part, most people believe that you can't protect gameplay. You can't actually protect gameplay as a thing. Like mechanics cannot be protected. This is a general understanding. Yeah, because gameplay is too, like when you talk about like mechanics in a board game or stuff like that, right? Like there is no protection for the very specific steps in which you can make some player do a specific thing. Because anything that you can put onto paper, it's just way too generic. Like you can't stop people from rolling dice, for example, rolling cubes into a can and then making moves in a specific fashion, because it's just way, way, way too generic.
So what you just said there, right, where you can't, or rather, the concept of copywriting or patenting mechanics, right? Isn't that what this is right here?
So that's the thing, right? Like a couple of things here. Like number one, I want to really just clarify here. You can't copyright. Copywriting, once again, is just specific to the expression of something.
Yeah. So this is patent.
Correct.
Patenting game mechanics.
So where, for what it's worth, Nintendo's attempt at trying to file a suit under patent law is probably the only way they could take action against someone who is effectively made a Pokemon clone plus extra steps. I'm gonna put a clarity plus extra steps.
Isn't the asterisk extra steps a big part of what makes it not
I
fall under patent, because it's so specific?
Okay, so here's the thing. Short answer, you are technically right. This is also why I feel like this filing is very interesting to talk about. So now I want to flag out like a quick thing. So like one of the things that I was mentioning earlier was how these are 3 different patents that they filed against Pocket Pair, right? And specifically, if you look at the patents, the summary that Forbes gave, right, is like patent number 1 is the ability to throw, effectively being able to throw a Pokeball, right?
Being able to throw a thingy at a person,
and then doing a bunch
them.
of things, and then doing a bunch of things, right? So that's number 1. Or and then very specifically being able to throw a thingy that becomes a character, or that thing represents a character, and that character becomes like a fighting and things like that.
I think it's about to do the thingy instead of Pokeball, because when we had half this conversation at Gamescom, we were talking about throwing a disc, throwing a pyramid.
Correct. And this is exactly it. And this is where as I said, like I think they updated the patent, because when I first read it, I know that they had specifically mentioned a sphere. Yeah.
Well,
anyways,
there you go.
Anyway, so that's number 1, right? That's number 1. Number 2, the second patent is specifically to enter what is in effect the zoom focus mode. This is actually something that I didn't know before this, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that.
So you know how every game, like, so in Pokemon, if you play, right, you know how you like when you're walking around, you have a third-person view, and then when you want to throw your Pokeball, you press a Pokeball, like you press the button, and then you enter this like aiming state.
I think it's a very new Pokemon game thing.
Yeah.
When I played Pokemon back in like Gen 4, none of that.
No. This is all their open world stuff. Like they did it with all the open world stuff. So when they did this, right, like this second view that they're doing, like preparing to throw a Pokeball, and then like they gave you like a rough idea when it's going to land, that kind of thing. The open world Pokemon games. So this is the targeted aim view that they're trying to protect. this specific expression of that one, right? That this mythology is what they're trying to protect, right? And then after that, finally, right? The third one is actually specifically about how you can ride Pokemon by quick selecting between a menu. Because the past ones before this, the one that they're citing before this, is like you have to interact directly with the creature instead of like through a UX, a separate UI. So like if you play Monster Hunter, because some people are talking about Monster Hunter, and please correct me if, like, once again, I don't play Monster Hunter, this is a problem. So like, you know how like in the past, a lot of like these kind of riding creatures kind of thing, you had to run up to the creature and then press a thing so that then you ride it, or it's in your inventory and then you press on that inventory item and then you ride it, right? This one specifically says that, you get a menu of possible rides and then you click on that to jump onto it immediately.
Okay.
So this is the distinction that they're trying to carve out for their patent one.
But Palworld doesn't have that. You have to run to the thing to ride it.
No, they actually have. I think,
they have. You can hold F if your creature has a saddle, and then
no,
it's like whoop.
I think so. That's the thing. I'm not entirely sure, and that's the part that I'm a bit blurred out about, because I think they do have one that allows you to quick select, if not mistaken. I don't know whether it's an update or something like that. And if it's not there, then like I could be wrong. But when I read it,
I was more. I mean, okay, I haven't played the new Pokemon game,
right.
New Pokemon games, so I don't know exactly how it visually looks or anything. But if it's UX design, right, or I guess the UI is what really matters here, or how the experience is, right?
Right.
Then I would say if what you're saying here is accurate to the patent, right? Then I don't think Power even remotely gets close to that, because you have to switch to the thing, throw it out, and then press F, F for you to write the thing.
Right. So that was the one that I'll be honest, that one was the one that surprised me a little bit, because I could swear when I first read it, I thought it was closer to the Monster Hunter one, the one that everyone thought it was. And then when I was like looking at the distinction one, that one they recently, like when they like, just once again specific to this one, to this show, right? When I was trying to do this show, I read it up, and it felt like, because they were specifically saying, oh, but in the past you have to go up to the one, you can't choose it from a menu. So right now, like, it seems like that was the thing that they were trying to protect.
Yeah, no, but even Powell curves that too, because you don't have to run up to it. You hold F, it runs to you.
So this one is an interesting distinction that I'm not sure where they think that they might have standing on.
I don't know.
So this was the one that I felt like, because when I was playing Palworld certainly didn't have it, and I haven't been playing it for a while. Right?
Yeah, I played it relatively recently, so it's still fresh in there.
Cool. Yeah, because I only played it like during the first 2-3 months, and then I like forgot about it already.
Yeah, I've like returned every so often. It's like, it's fun. The first like couple days of it is really fun, and then it drops off a cliff really quickly.
That's
and
nice.
you let it sit for a couple months, and then you go back, it's like, this is so fun. And it's like, oh, I remember why I dropped it last time.
Anyways, but yeah, so coming back to it, I mean, without realizing, we've actually more or less like went through like a large chunk of what the patents are already. And I think we're sort of like hitting into the second part of this, which is really about like what our thoughts are about the suit specifically.
Yes.
Right. So Luke, we chatted a little bit offline about this thing. We have very different views about this.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so I think, but for what it's worth, I do think your views are very much in line with a lot of what I see in public discourse.
Heard it here first. I'm a populist.
I, on the other hand, do not share that view. So for our first podcast, this is turning out to be like incredibly like contentious already. I don't know whether we're gonna keep this up, by the way, as a thing, but like, let's see where this lands. So Luke, let's start with you first. Can you please explain your view on this, what you think about this, what your issues are with it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, in general, right, I think I'm of the belief that copywriting mechanics like these, as
Patenting.
it currently is. Sorry,
Patenting.
what did I say?
You said copyright.
Oh, sorry. Okay, patenting mechanics like these, as it currently is practiced, does not work. Because the whole point of patenting is to right make sure, hey, this is fresh, this is new, don't touch it. And while yes, it works for things outside of design, right? Once you start getting into the realm of design and mechanics and stuff like that, it to me it falls flat. And if it gets practiced in a way that patents are practiced for other things like medicine, like building engines and stuff like that, it's very quickly, or there is a very high potential of exploitation and abuse of this, which can lead to, as you were talking earlier, a restriction on inventing, of
Right.
creating and stuff like that. And that's kind of why I personally am very against the whole
Okay.
idea of this. And yeah, I'm very against the idea of this whole shebang.
Okay, there's a couple of things there I probably should clarify with you first. Like, number one, when you said medicine earlier, could you clarify what you meant by that as an example? Like, when you said that, what in your mind was like, oh, this is a problem if it happens to medicine, in medicine?
No, it is happening in medicine.
Oh, okay, so because you're saying that because it's happening in medicine, you don't want to, you're citing that as a thing that you don't want to happen inside
Yes.
games, right?
Yeah.
Understood. All right, sorry, thanks for the clarification. I needed a clarification because the sentence sounded a little bit weird.
Sorry, ask those questions, I'll clarify the points that I need to.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and really do disagree with you on that one. On the reason, on a very simple and plain reason. So the thing is that, like, as we went through this exercise trying to read through a patent filing claim and everything else, it is really, really wordy. Like, and it's really, really specific.
Yeah.
The examples they give are like very specific to what they want to try and do, but they basically say like, oh yeah, we're going to leave a little bit of like space so that we can still twitch this a little bit, that kind of thing. So like the reason why I think they sort of remove the sphere thing is because it's like, oh, but what if like at a certain angle the thing we throw stops looking like a sphere or something like that? And then you're like, yo, you don't want to argue that kind of thing. So you want to be able to have that space. Right now, without and as I mentioned earlier, like the problem right now is that in board games in particular, like there's no such thing as patenting gameplay, because anything you can do in board game gameplay in particular, like it's just too generic. You just really, really cannot do it. It's just
okay. Maybe I know you're going through it, but I really want to ask this question. At what point does it become too generic?
No. As in, like, it's any attempt to try and patent a thing that you can try and do in a board game, like a board game gameplay kind of thing, it becomes too broad. It automatically becomes stifling in terms of
why.
There is no thing that you can do in board games at this time that is particularly inventive. At the most, it would either fall into copyright or trademark.
What about monopolies, hotel and houses system?
That's why I said that's trademark and copyright. The system itself, the roll a die, move your pieces along the board, is not patented.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about building hotels.
Yeah. So what happens is that you can't you can call it building hotels, but what mechanically, if you file a patent, right, you can't say building hotels because that's too broad.
Multiplier.
Yeah. So that becomes the thing. But then, like as I said, that is too generic already, because if you do that, then no other game can build a multiplier on a specific slot in a game. That is too generic.
On a game board.
Yeah, that is too generic, because
you must own the whole color set of. See, you can word it in a way where it becomes specific enough, and then it's like, at which point does it become, oh, this is patentable, or oh, this shouldn't be.
Correct. So it needs to go down that line. But as I said, like in general, because the level of specificity that you need to do there requires basically your borderline into the expression of the idea itself already, that copyright is just the way to go about it. You remember what you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like you're already protected by copyright. You don't need a patent filing, and patent filing is expensive, and it really just does nothing for you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so like you're not adding to the protections. You're just doing it for no reason. So that's
Okay.
actually the reason why like board games don't really apply.
Yeah. So I want you to keep that in mind. Patent filing is expensive, right?
Yeah. I'll get into this one a little bit as I said we go along. Because I know we've had this conversation outside, and
We did.
I'm willing, I'm prepared to have this one with you, because there are things about there are things about how we experience the law that I think you need to keep in mind. But let's get into that one a little bit. So let's move on.
Okay.
Then we go into the next one. Sorry. So let's talk about very specifically what they're trying to do here, and I think it's also worth noting. When we were talking about this offline, you brought up the Nemesis patent that Warner Brothers brought up, and I actually took it up and I read it, and I didn't read the whole thing. I read it to halfway, and one of the first things I mentioned to you actually, the first things I asked you after reading like it halfway, right, was like, has this ever been like has this ever been taken to court?
As far as I'm aware, no.
Exactly. So in effect, Nintendo's suit is the first time anyone has tried to file gameplay related patent lawsuits.
Yeah. And here's the thing, and this is why this is important to me.
Right.
Is because this sets precedent.
Right. So let me get into it a little bit as well. Now, the present state as it is, nothing stops anyone else, right, from cloning your game.
Yeah, nothing.
It absolutely nothing does.
And let me just also say, right, as someone who's currently in mobile game development, that is so rampant in mobile games.
Yeah.
That it loses all value. To me, that statement loses all value.
But my question to you is, should this be allowed?
It's already happening.
It doesn't matter. Like, did you look like?
Okay.
My question to you is like, should it be allowed?
Should it be allowed?
Yeah, is your argument going to be like, hey, children trafficking is already happening? Sure, whatever, man. Like that's not the argument, right?
Okay. Yeah, you know what? Fair point. That was a very dismissive response of it's already happening. Right?
Yeah.
Should it be allowed? So, all right. As a designer, no. I want new stuff or rather, no. As a player,
right,
I want to see new stuff happen. I want to see new innovative things happening.
Right.
As a developer, some of these things are there for a reason. They work for a reason.
Yeah. So correct. So then the argument becomes like, okay, they work, yes. Then the argument becomes, okay, how do I make so right now without patent protection? Oh, sorry, let me rephrase this. Because this in the current existing framework, there is no way to effectively protect gameplay. All right? I think we have to acknowledge this first. So
yes,
Nintendo is basically trying to say, we're going to make an attempt to protect gameplay using patent law. And then as it stands right now, without it, you can basically just rip off any game you want. And the only thing stopping you is shame. Just
yeah, there. I mean, okay, so the whole concept of ripping off any game you want, right? That's true, and that's already rampant in the industry.
Yeah, correct. Which I
or not.
Yeah, correct. But as I said, it's not something that we should just let it be if we can do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right? And so Nintendo's actually doing something about it. I want to flag out that one. That's number one. Number two, what happens? Remember, like when I mentioned to you, like patents are really, really specific.
Yeah.
And basically what happens is that as long as someone owns the patent, in order for you to ensure that you can get away with something, for example, right? Like basically say like, oh, I want to do, for example, a Pokemon game, but you don't want to fall into this this sort of this patent issue with Nintendo, right? What you need to do is you need to dissect what essentially is their technical document, which is right in front of you, and then go very specifically say, how can we do this different so that it doesn't fall into that space? So it forces innovation. It forces you to do something different so that you don't make a clone of Pokemon. You know? So, this is actually also where I think it's worth recognizing like what Nintendo has actually kind of technically done, because what happens is that they separated the Pokeball, like the Pokeball related mechanics from the aiming mechanics. And honestly, I think Nintendo will have a tough time getting the aiming mechanics and potentially even the riding mechanics off. Like as in, like I think they have a difficult time with those two. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
But then if we pursue this route where you can, or you are starting to pattern gameplay, at what point do you not get to sprint anymore in a third person shooter? Because one company goes, oh, you hold B to go sprint. Oh, you tap B to go sprint. Or you tap any of the face buttons, any button on the controller.
So
at what point? So hold on. So in like 19 third person shooters, you no longer get to sprint because it's been patented.
Correct. So the short answer is that that's too broad and it cannot be patented. I'm telling you that it just cannot be.
Says who?
Says every patent office.
Because we are going down the slope of, if you can patent this, you can start patenting everything related to that. And at some point, everything is patented.
No, but that's why I said, like, it says every patent office. Remember how I mentioned to you, like, when a patent is too broad, patent officers will actually say no. So in the case, like, when you're doing something as basic as an expression of, like, movement, an expression of movement, it is too basic. That's why it won't be, you won't get filing for it.
Okay, then I will refer you back to, remember we were just talking about Monopoly like 5-10 minutes ago, where you can get deeper to a point where you can make it patentable, right? And for the act of sprinting, you can technically, since we don't have precedence right now to do that, but there is a world where you can get to a point where you cannot.
No, you can't. You literally can't. I'm telling you that you can't. No, I'm telling you that you literally
as
can't.
It currently is, or as it may be in the future.
Maybe. Because as I said, like the very need of patenting requires it to be that specific, that as long as it's conceivable that it will stop and hinder innovation, we will not be allowed. That is actually a law for patent. That's a running underlying approach towards patent filings.
So the crux of it is that it hinders innovation. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go from there then.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you had a point.
Oh no! It was more okay. If so, originally I was I guess arguing for the point of there will come a point if the precedence here is set as you can patent game mechanics, at a certain point all mechanics of a genre become patented and you can't do anything. But so you are saying that, okay, now the issue is not that you can patent all mechanics, because if it stifles innovations, it's not allowed. So going forward, the point I have to prove is that this does stifle innovation.
Right, which I assume that you had a follow-up?
Oh, no. It's just, we'll continue having a conversation, and as you provide stuff, and I talk about stuff, I'll highlight how these certain things that do stifle innovation.
Well, okay, no, but that's exactly it, because I don't have an example of such a thing, because to me, this ensures, this ensures Nintendo's, like, it ensures a creator's right to monetize their creation, their inventions, and their innovations. So now I do not see, at least based on the filing that Nintendo has done so far, I personally think that the Readinng one, the UI improvement that they're trying to do, the UX UI improvement that they filed for, if I read it correctly, and assuming that there is an overlap, which is based on what you've told me that they don't, that had the best standing, because an improvement of that approach should be protectable at some level. I will concede, however, UX improvements does have kind of weird duality about it, because, like, what is the alternative is really often the question. Yeah, so that's a thing that I will concede to it.
So the whole idea of a sub menu pops up and you select a thing to write from there. So based on what you're saying, that entire concept of sub-menu pops up, select a thing, becomes patented. Which means going forward, no other games with summonable, writable creatures can do that.
Well,
Which means once that precedence is set, there'll be more of this popping up.
So here's the thing.
And with more of that popping up, at some point, you do not get to have a drop-down menu to summon a writable creature to ride.
So a couple of things on that one. I also want to clarify. You do know that patents are not completely like binary, right? Like it's not always a C and D.
Oh yeah, no, I get that, right? But then it becomes a matter of arguing it in court.
Oh no. Sorry. You're not necessarily automatically not allowed to do something. You can file, like you can actually ask the guys for permission. Is actually what I'm trying to say. Like I don't know the technical words for it, but you can ask for permission.
Okay, but they still reserve the right to say no.
Yes, but most people just ask you for money.
Okay, it's okay. Keep in mind.
No. I'm waiting for you to say those words. Go ahead, say those words.
Okay, so all right. The grand scheme of things here, right, is that corporations want this to happen. Bigger studios, bigger companies want this to happen because they have the resources they need to file patents to go after indies who are infringing on their patents, right? Because again, this is a future scenario where we have gone down the road of game mechanics can be patented, and there comes a scenario where all variations of this are patented, so you are not allowed to make those mechanics anymore, right? So in that scenario, an indie studio has to pay one of these corporations for the right to have their characters write a creature.
There we go. All right,
and that is, as we will talk about sooner or it's already kind of feeling, that Balula video about it being anti-indie,
competitive,
anti-competition, anti-competitive, right there highlights it all.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to flag on that one, and there's two things specific to one of it is about whether this is even possible. I want to really clarify that one, at least based on present filing, because I'll put that out first. That's number one. And then number two, it's parallel in the practice of law, especially with copyright as an example. But we'll get into that one. If I forget about it, please bring that up to me afterwards. So I want to go and talk about thank you. So let's talk about specifically about what has been put up. And you remember that conversation I just like rolled along with it, like how like, oh wait, then you have this thing where if it's just purely an UX improvement in that kind of way, and then what is your alternative? How many variations can you do and stuff like that, right? So, and whether this stifles innovation. Now, and once again, like when it becomes too generic, you automatically are not allowed to do it, because
once that threshold is crossed, does that mean all previous patents holding it are also annulled?
I can't speak to whether they are annulled. That's actually a very interesting question. I can't speak for it, but it does create precedent that you can argue with. I'll probably put that up as a thing. I want to flag out like where I was getting at was like I think just shortly offline. I was giving an example earlier about how like an example of patents that you can't possibly file for. I don't know what I think I did it offline, right? Like a patent that you can't. I'll just put it out here first. So specifically about a patent that you can't possibly file for. It's just like, for example, a cylinder, a lidless cylinder that is used to hold water. Like that literally follows like there is no way you can no patent office will ever give that to you.
Okay, then let's get a little more let's get a little more descriptive.
Correct.
A glass cylinder made of the type of glass with a rim of however many millimeters this is, this tall, this thing. At some point it becomes specific enough that there is an argument for patenting it.
No, but there isn't. There really isn't. Because in this case, right, there's no mythology that needs to be protected, that should be protected, because at some point you've gone into the realm of expression. The Monopoly example that you give is actually a strangely correct example, is because when you get that granular, when you get that granular, you're no longer talking about mythology, you're talking about expression.
So again, what you're saying is patent and copyright
Methodology.
can interchange.
No, I'm telling you that
At some point of patenting, it becomes copywriting.
No. They cannot interchange. At some point, it falls into that space and falls out of the jurisdiction of the other.
But it's the methodology of doing a mechanic.
It cannot. That's the thing. That's the reason why no one actually believes that mechanics can be patented. Because the mechanics, right, by itself, right, is a concept. It's a concept on its own. And this is why a lot of people make this argument. And this is also why, that's why this whole thing that they're trying to do is really weird, but at the same time, like, the specificity of the filing can be specific enough to maybe warrant it, and this is where the gray area comes in. So,
in that specificity, right? At which point does it fall into copyright law?
So we'll get into that one a little bit. And I'll give you an example on this one. So here's the thing that gets really interesting, and why currently there's why I want to make an argument for Nintendo on this one. So I know where your default stance is. I know where your default stance is, but this is actually where I want to make an argument for Nintendo, and mostly because this is the same argument I would make for every game out there, including things like, for example, Balatro, or Hades, you know, and all this kind of stuff. Like, every one of these games, right, have very unique gameplay mechanics, and the expression of them, right, the way they do it is just purely unprotectable as it stands. Right now, it cannot be protected. So what happens is that, like, say, for example, using Nintendo's one, because we're talking about Nintendo Switch specifically, right? Nintendo's efforts to try and figure out the specific way in which you have a character run around, and then the way you express the ball throw, the pullback of the ball throw, the way you calculate the arc and the throw of it, and then finally, right, the way the ball lands and it interacts with its surroundings, with its creatures and everything that's there, like the Pokemon experience that's there.
Do they have the math formula for that? Like, posted in their patent?
Oh, I didn't check. There's a lot of supporting documents, so I don't know whether they've included that. But I know an earlier filing that I've seen includes a diagram, which includes that one. So that's part of the supporting ones. So it's specific to that. Like, oh, it has to be this way of doing it.
I was real quickly just scrolling, and something that just popped out immediately. Angular velocity sensor 90 in this embodiment.
The angular velocity sensor. So it's really that specific, right? So the reason why I personally feel for Nintendo's rights to protect these rights, right, is because, right, the work they need to put in to polish that experience deserves to be protected. They deserve to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So because right now, there's no system in place. There's no system of law in place, right, in which it stops anyone from just making a Pokemon clone, short of shame. Oh, and the fact that Nintendo's reputation for, like, being super litigious.
Yeah, they will copyright your ass out of till you're broke.
No. But here's the funny thing: they can't. The fact is,
sure they have.
No. Let me.
You make a Pokemon clone tomorrow, Nintendo's gonna sue your ass for copyright.
Sorry. I need to clarify. I didn't mean clone by literally a clone. I mean a reskin. Sorry, I need to paraphrase that a little bit better. If you do a Pokemon reskin, Nintendo can't legally do anything to you right now. There's no protection for you, right? If you did a Pokemon reskin, that is how. And the only thing that stops anyone from doing it is shame and the fear of Nintendo taking legal action.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how it is. So I feel for them, because right now that same thing, the same fear doesn't apply to Latro, to the guys at Supergiant. Though you can argue whether Supergiant's, like, huge right now, but you know, like all these guys. When you and I make a game and we crack our heads over trying to innovate over, like, new mechanics and figure out how to polish it so the expression of them, the way people experience it, is shiny and gold, and then some retard, pardon me, I'm sorry, I know we're not supposed to use those words these days.
Yeah, that's a PC term right there.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, I do, sorry, quick aside, I really do feel that people who can shamelessly do game clones have some sort of disability, because that level of shamelessness requires a level of psychopathy, in my opinion, or sociopathy.
So
Maybe it's sociopathy, maybe it's psychopathy. Like, someone can correct me on
I
the
ain't gonna
terminologies,
get
but
into
yeah, but
the psychology of things here.
yeah,
That's
but
not my
right,
jurisdiction.
right. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to get here is that, like, I want people like okay, look, Belatro's huge. Like, the guy's got a shit ton of money, more than he knows what to do with nowadays. But like the fact is, I still want him to have his rights protected, his creation protected, and not only on the level of copyright. I want him because the design of Belatro is super duper innovative. The whole set itself is super duper innovative. I don't want someone to just do a Belatro reskin, earn their own $1 million, and just run off. I think it would be deeply unfair without him getting at least a piece of that pie.
Okay. So I feel personally that I'm in a unique position to actually talk about that. So as I mentioned earlier, in mobile game development,
Right.
there are 1,001 clones of a billion different things we've seen.
Right.
So a case study that I actually recently did,
Right.
just for my own understanding of the mobile games industry, since
Right.
I am stepping into it right now,
Right.
is Survivor.io.
Right.
When that game came out, so I didn't write down the numbers, but it was, I think currently it's made over 500 million over its lifetime, right? So as always, when a breakout title like that happens, people rush to copy. It happened with PUBG,
Correct.
and then you saw Fortnite and all the battle royales that followed. It happened with Survivor.io and the million, like the thousand, over like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands Survivor.io clones that come out. The second game that followed Survivor.io's 500 million is at, I think, 10 or 50 million.
Right.
So, okay, and put it to scale, that's 10% of what Survivor.io earned.
I get you.
So, first to market advantage is huge, and anybody that copies it after will never replicate anything remotely close. Even if you copy every single mechanic, it doesn't do it.
So it's funny that you should say that, because do you know what Blizzard makes their, like, what their biggest, like, titles are, like what they are? Like,
enlighten me.
Blizzard's history as a game company is no open secret. They don't innovate. They iterate things to a ridiculously refined polish.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yep. And so here's the thing. The reason why I bring this up as a thing is because there is a level of innovation involved in that iteration.
Yes, there is.
So
UX work, polish work is incredibly innovative and difficult.
So they make meaningful changes. So for what it's worth, that's worth something, right? But here's the thing, they're not first to market. And as a result, as a result, more often than not, the original first to markets, actually often disappear. Now, the argument, the example that you were using, we're talking about like direct reskins and clones. Actually, I think they're more closer to direct clones. There's no innovation involved. They're just direct clones. But the thing is that there's also cases, I can't think of proper cases for this one. Because every big game that's really made it has actually actively made an innovation to make it work out.
And that right there is the secret sauce.
Correct.
Right? So on why direct copying doesn't pan out.
But what happens is there are a lot of cases. Oh, actually, no. Funny that you should mention. No. Now I remembered. Actually, the example I wanted to make has more to do with some of the other type mobile games that you see. And I think that one is a slightly better example. And actually, this is a thing that happens in unfortunately, this is actually technically secondhand news, but my sources, I trust my sources enough that like they wouldn't exaggerate the data on this, right?
Okay.
So you're in the mobile games market. That's one thing, but as a rule with casual games, like hyper casual games in particular, What some games do is they actually, because they don't iterate, what they do is that they repeatedly reskin and cannibalize from one another.
Yes, they
And-
do.
And the key monetization method they do is not through innovation, but what they do is they outmarket the competitor. Basically, it's a cost of operations for them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So the counterpoint to that, right, specifically is that when you are the first to innovate in the mobile games market,
right,
you have that first movers advantage, and you also
so you're right,
grow
but
bigger from
yeah,
it.
but what happens is that, but where I come on this one, right, is that I want because you are making a case right now based on the fact that no one else can refine that experience better than what you've done. Because you've used an example that I don't have an example, unfortunately. This is actually the reason why I've hesitated on
No,
bringing.
if they've refined it better than what you've done, they've taken your product and improved it, and that's improvement enough.
That's fair. Sorry, bad preamble. Where I wanted to get at using the hyper casual market reference is that sometimes some people can just outmarket you. A very interesting example, relevant but not precise example, is, do you know the game Flappy Birds?
Yes.
Do you know how long that was in the market until it suddenly got viral?
No.
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the power of basically marketing. I think it's 3, by the way. I could be wrong.
And after those 3 years of Flappy Bird, right? How many Flappy Bird clones popped up after that?
Correct. But it is about right. The point I'm trying to get, there's a lot, by the way. There was a lot after that.
Yeah. I know. I'm saying it as there is a lot that pops up. This copying happens everywhere.
Right.
But if Flappy Bird's original creator didn't take the game down, nothing would have competed with it for a while.
No, actually, there was a lot that was. And the problem was that, and the problem here at the end of the day is that my argument was always that just because it happens, I want to keep emphasizing, just because it happens is not argument enough that it should be allowed. As a thing.
So here's the thing, right? If the first person who made Flappy Bird and he gets to patent the entire gameplay of Flappy Bird, isn't that stifling innovation? Where you're not allowed to do Flappy Bird in a different style, in a refined style to make a better product? So
that's the thing. I don't. The key word here is a better product, and where your innovations are becomes your follow-up filing, right? And this is
so. Here's the thing, right? The crux of the argument prior was that it needs to not stifle innovation. In the hands of a bigger company, in a big company, not a single developer like Flappy Bird. If a big company made Flappy Bird and they filed patent and they got patent for every single clone that came after, they would go hard for them. And an important point here to remember is that lawyers are expensive. Those solo devs, those indie companies making those clones cannot go up against them, because at the end of the day, you have to convince a judge or a jury that your game is different enough.
So I'm going to go into point number 2, which is exactly that. That's a great segue. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Remember how I mentioned to you earlier about how every artist in an artist alley technically commits copyright infringement? Have you ever thought about why no company just slaps them with a suit every time?
Soft power. I meant to answer that earlier.
Elaborate.
So it's basically free marketing. Free marketing at not too much of a cost to the parent company.
That's one way of looking at it, but
why?
Whenever someone posts up oh, this is going to be a game clone, right? How is that not going to be free marketing for the other game?
Because you don't mention the other game when you're talking about a game clone.
No. When every other game journal out there, right, talks about a game clone, right? They're going to make a comparison. Everyone's going to talk about the original game. As long as they know about it.
That happens to Souls. That happens to Souls.
Correct.
Every single Souls-like gets compared to, it's a Souls-like.
Right. And by the way, it's really badly done. I'm just going to put it out there. It's just horrible comparisons.
It's horrible.
But let's move
on.
The point I'm trying to get here is that companies don't do it, right, to every. By the way, some artists make a lot of money, more than a normal livable wage. It's a really reasonable
I'm aware.
money.
It's a ridiculous amount of money.
No. I'm very careful here. I don't want to say ridiculous because it is a reasonable amount of money. Like they should be paid for the amount of money they get, but it's a very reasonable, more than an average livable wage kind of thing. You're not like just
Okay.
paycheck to
The
paycheck kind of thing.
term, the term ridiculous is not to downplay your work and your
Correct.
efforts. Ridiculous as in a common man like me would
Fair
be
enough.
like, damn, what?
Fair enough. But where I'm going to get at here is that companies don't do it, right? Is because not only is it expensive for them to file the suits, because each individual suit themselves are actually going to cost them a lot of money to try and do it, especially within the various jurisdictions that you need to do it. And that's number one. And then number two, like number two, the thing is that the amount of exchange, like basically cost to benefit kind of thing, is just more often than not worth it. And as you say,
Yeah.
because what happens is, let me finish on this one. Like, but because as you say, they look at it and say, hey, the free marketing is worth it. Why not? So what happens is, right, like some games have done this, by the way. In the past, rather than to file for any sort of suit or anything else, and I really do think that this is actually what some games have like just tried to do as a, like, not only because there's no legal recourse at this moment, but because like this is how good nature like people go about it. Like when they see people doing like, oh yeah, hey, this game is inspired by something else, what they do is that rather than to say, hey, you're copying my game, what they'll effectively say, hey, come here and play the original. It's the same reason why after, like, for example, Elden Ring spiked up in popularity. Granted that this is the same company, like they a lot of them were like, oh wait, where does the word souls like come from? And then a lot of people ended up buying and buying Dark Souls 3 to go back and play it and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, so basically that's kind of the thing that like some companies can try and leverage on in terms of marketing. But right,
Okay.
so yeah, so at least from where it comes from a regulation kind of perspective, and this is once again like where I'm coming from in terms of like supporting Nintendo and what they're trying to do, is the fact that they're trying to protect an innovation that they sort of really have brought first to bring to market. Now,
Okay.
yeah, but here's the thing though, I should probably put this in because I want to be fair, I want to be balanced about this, and a lot of points that you brought up is very valid in terms of concerns. Here's the thing. Now that I've seen the updated patterns, I feel they're kind of weak.
So,
because so I want to
the stuff that you. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Do you want
no,
to rebut that real quick?
No.
What's the play here?
I want to clarify what I mean by I think they're kind of weak.
Okay.
Because previously, when I first read the original patents, patents 1 and 2 were filed under the same patent, as far as I know. Asterisk, as far as I know, as I understood it.
Yeah.
All right, they were filed under the same patent, meaning that not only did it specify that there's 2 zoom modes for it, and that would be the part of the gameplay that they said, oh yeah, we're going to pattern not only the zoom, but then the throw of the thing to summon the creature, and then like specifically to have the creature fight. You know, all these kind of like checkboxes to like you need to fill up everything. Because it's that specific, right? I was like, yeah, if you did all of these things in that specific order, this is a Pokemon game. This is literally how I would define the game flow of a Pokemon game. You know? Like if any other game tried to do this in this specific order, I will agree that this is practically a Pokemon game. You know? So like say for example, like we were talking about this, right? Let's say for example, if you were to not throw an object, you were to shoot a beam that opens a gate and that summons a creature, right? Like that's no longer a Pokemon. Like that wouldn't follow into the flow.
Yeah, but under this pattern, it could.
No. Actually, it wouldn't. It still says it needs to throw an object. It just doesn't specify the shape.
Yeah, but if you throw a portal, they could. There's an argument where that.
No, because as long as there's no throw action, the keyword throw has to be a thing. Yeah. So that's why it's there. So that's a huge thing on its own, right? So like when it's specifically like throw, creatures must fight. They must like enter that zoom in like enhance throw mode and all that kind of stuff. Like all of this has to be done in that order. I was like, okay, this is a reasonably specific one enough. Is this specific enough? I don't know. I'm comfortable enough to let the course decide. Once it's been broken down into these 3 ones, it starts getting into being too generic.
Mm.
It gets into this space where it's like, okay, I'm not okay with you saying that just because you throw an item and it affects the surroundings, and even if you tell me that it summons a creature, I get a little bit on the gray area, a little bit on the gray area. It's getting a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I think what you mentioned earlier, right, about how secondary, like, lifting up other games, and it's like, oh, inspired by all those kind of things. As a developer, absolutely, those would be the ideals. Those would be what I would hope the games industry is. But unfortunately, the reality of things is that the C-suites are in control of a lot of things. Like it or not, that's how it's going to function. And it's been proven time and time again that corporations will fuck over smaller developers because they don't want competition.
So,
and if you go by the realistic happenings around and not the idealistic ones where developers are in control and get to celebrate the win of another fellow developer, it upends that argument where, oh, they won't use the patents draconianly, which Nintendo already has shown they are very draconian with litigations. And if they're allowed this, they will start doing a lot more.
So there's a couple of things there. Number one, I probably I want to highlight the thing about copyright as well. Go back to the one about copyright. Okay. So copyright has to be very specific. So it's in many ways, although we talk about copyright in terms of whether it feels like because an expression is gray, there is a question of likeness involved, and so the likeness must be distinct enough, and there's an argument over how many percentage that must be. There's a calculation for it. Please, it's a test for the courts kind of thing. Just so you know, if you ever have a copyright suit, that's actually a thing. There's a threshold for it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, hopefully by the time I'm involved in a copyright suit, I have a legal team backing me, and I don't have to do the legal work.
Yeah. But basically, there is a matter of doing a calculation kind of thing. So people would need to do the calculation, and Nintendo lawyers probably did a calculation and said yeah, this is not enough to get to that required percentage, so you're not going to get it. So the large reason why they don't do this with everybody is because the benefits of it is obviously never that large. The question is, at the end of the day, most companies don't, most if not all companies don't do litigation, right, for the sake of litigation's sake, because it's always bad PR when you punch down. Nintendo, despite its draconian history, by the way, as a point of reference, Disney is actually more draconian than Nintendo, but that's for US reasons.
I know. Disney is also very draconian.
Yeah, but I want to Disney is ultra litigious, but that's because the US has a weird practice when it comes to copyright law. I'm going to go into that separately, but I'll make a side mention of that separately. But Nintendo's approach towards it is, has been largely sort of to scale, so to speak. Because yes, they do visibly quote unquote punch down, but a lot of it has been stuff where, at least from what I've seen, there is reasonable cause for concern. I think my personal best reference, right, is the Mario Kart one that they did in Akihabara. Do you know about that one?
No.
So for the longest amount of time, people could, because Mario Kart became super duper popular, right? So for the longest amount of time, you could actually rent out Mario costumes from them, and then you could ride in the cart and drive around Akihabara.
Oh, I've seen pictures like those. Yeah. That's super fun.
Yeah, it's super awesome. They got a C&D from Nintendo over it.
Damn. Yeah. Nintendo taking away fun things.
Correct. And there's good reason for it.
Okay. Let's hear the good reasons.
Because at the end of the day, if anyone gets run over by a car while you're on a live road driving one of those carts, that's damage to the Nintendo IP.
Or it's just stupid people, or people taking acceptable risks.
The problem is that the individuals there would say that it's an acceptable risk, but from a PR standpoint, right, Nintendo does not want to get themselves involved in something like that. So that's why they said, stop it. especially when it got popular enough. When it was a small bunch of people, like they left it for the longest amount of time. By the way, it took them years to take action.
Yeah, the season. This is the whole idea of the season. This is that when it gets popular enough, they have the power to shut it down.
Right, but basically, it's not everybody that gets hit with this, because what happens is Nintendo basically measures out the risk versus the risk of it versus how much it'll cost them to do it.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. It puts the decision in the corporation's hands.
So yeah,
not the developer's hands.
Right, but the problem, as I said earlier, there are enough social factors, like as in when I say social factors, I meant like sort of surrounding factors within the ecosystem that just generally discourages you from doing stuff like that. Because as I said,
but it doesn't stop people like Elon Musk from doing the shit he does.
Because he's a sociopath. He
still has some of the biggest companies in the world.
Dude, he's a sociopath. You can't use him as an example for anything.
I'm just saying.
Do you know that he's like he does a lot of things, but do you know how many he's failed? Like, do you know how many suits he's failed?
That's not the point. That's not the point.
No, but that's very much the point.
No, it's not. The core of it is that it's open to abuse.
Yes,
it's open to...
No, look.
This sets a precedent that opens up a lot of indies to getting punched down, getting draconian.
So since you brought Elon up, I'm going to give you a very, very good example that is exactly relevant to where you are talking about. There is a organization that is there. I can't remember the proper name of it off the top of my head, but there's an organization that helps identify like basically set standards, advertising standards for companies, like a group of like advertising companies. Basically, the advertising company said like we need somebody to help us sort of establish some sort of standards for advertising, so that brand safety and stuff like that. And then what happens is this organization said, Twitter, you're not up to the standards that we need you to be. We're going to tell our advertisers, the people who are linked to us, to not advertise with you, right? And then what happened was that, keep in mind, this organization has no teeth. The most they can do is just say, like, you shouldn't do it, but they have no way to enforce it.
Like the UN, don't do it, but still happens.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So anyways, by the way, just so you know, on that note, that tone is true of any legal enforcement, just to put it out there.
It ain't.
Yes, it is. I'll go into that a little bit, but let's not go there.
Let's not. The police.
Yeah. So what if I have a gun that can gun down every police? Does that mean I become the law? Yeah. Does that mean I become the law? No, it cannot be. Like, basically, it just becomes an arm race from there, right? Like, that means basically the guy who the biggest gun.
How do you think the US is the biggest superpower? Because they have the biggest gun.
Let's not. So this is exactly why I don't want to bury the lead, because, like, first and foremost, this approach is not a reasonable argument, at least to this one, because what happens is that it comes from a place of absolute bad faith, right? So
it comes from a place of realism. It's what's happening.
It is,
and has potential for abuse.
So let me finish it off. So what happened was that the organization I told you, basically they had to shut down because they ran out of funds trying to pursue a counterclaim against Elon. That's basically what happened, right? Now, the thing is, however, like, basically they knew they are in the right. They know they're going to win the court case, right?
But to draw a parallel, just real quick, that would be an indie versus a corporation.
No, I know. So this is exactly why I brought it up as an example, because I told you I'm going to be fair about this, right? But this is also why I disagree with you, because as a result of that, yes, damage has been done. Like, the organization no longer exists, right? The individual damage to the indie may happen, but the long-term damage to people like Elon and all these companies, especially if they want to continue doing work for a long period of time, are always irreparable. Like, irreparable. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Irreparable. Thank you.
Okay.
It's always irreparable.
Unfortunately, that doesn't really work in games, because companies like EA, like Blizzard, like Ubisoft, they have such shit reputations for the shit they pull in their game, and they're still AAA making stupid amounts of money almost every year.
Actually, they're not. they're largely in the red, and most of them have
Are they?
yeah, they're largely in the red. I say in the red in a sort of almost vague manner. EA is a weird one because they straddle between like publisher developer kind of thing. But I think Blizzard is one very good example where like they've been losing money for a very long time. And that's
Like,
why
I was under the impression they were in the green.
um
Like maybe
think-
not record
Yeah, yeah.
profits like back in the day, but I was still under the impression they were in the green.
No, I think you're right. They're still in the green, but the thing was that they are visibly in the decline. Right? So
That I agree with.
yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that like their market share has been declining. I think that's the right way of phrasing it. So like whether they still have the same amount of money, I think is the part that is not clear. But like the market share is definitely in the decline. Like and the thing is that these players are not going to go back to them, right? Simply because they remove the competition. You know. So that's always worth recognizing.
With enough competition removal, it becomes a monopoly.
It doesn't work, and it's different because monopolies right now monopolies only happen because the barrier to enter is just too high. It's no longer normal. I want to emphasize normal, where a monopoly happens simply because they remove the competition. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, but at some point, if you can pattern down every single people that gets remotely successful, it becomes a monopoly.
So this is also why I keep arguing. Like this is sort of another thing that I want to get back to you on that one, which is why I said like first, if you innovate, most of the time your innovation, if it gets protected, you own your innovation, patent law, you monetize your one. The guys like the big boys can't steal from you. I think that's important to recognize. So that's number one. So that protects you from the big boys saying like, oh, I made another clone of this game. I'm going to outmarket you and I'm going to get like the larger market share from whatever the potential player base is going to be. Right? So that's number one. Number two, you said it yourself. If you're first to market and your thing is shiny and gold and all that kind of stuff, like as long as no one can do a meaningful innovation, like for the reference that we did with like Blizzard and stuff like that, like if no one can make a meaningful innovation off of your product, you're just, first to market always wins. Right? The question
There's a reason why after 20 years, WoW is still one of the biggest, if not the biggest MMO out there. They were first to market. No, maybe Final Fantasy 14 touches the level of polish it has.
There's a different thing there, but let's not. Once again, let's
yeah,
not.
we don't have to go down, right? Yeah,
right.
We're kind of closing in on 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
So that's number two. So if you're first to market and if your inventions are actually properly protected, no one can outmarket you to be able to steal that market share, which was potentially yours, supposed to be yours anyway, right? And then, and if anyone wants to try and be better, they literally have to be better. You know, you have to give them an excuse for it. With that in mind, right? Like being able to protect a game in terms of mechanics and the whole of it, by the way. Now, as a whole, as a product, right? I think it's something that should be done. Now, however, like as I said, looking at what has been filed, there's no current system for it that allows for something like that, by the way.
Exactly.
But based on what has been filed, I agree they are way too broad. And Palworld's like I really don't think as a result of this suit, right? I actually honestly think that the patents are going to come out more damaged than they actually are. Oh, sorry. As a quick aside, this is one thing that we didn't manage to talk about. I did. There's one thing that I didn't mention to you earlier, and I feel like it's a valid point. One reason why nobody likes taking patents into lawsuits is because, remember I mentioned you like the second layer of tests is through a lawsuit. Is because once you put it into that lawsuit, right, and people argue over it, you actually effectively, more often than not, lose parts of that patents, because some parts of that patent is going to be deemed too broad very, very easily. And then as a result, you might strip it down to the point that it no longer actually has any meaningful like stance at all.
Yeah.
So now Nintendo has taken it to Pocket Pair. Pocket Pair is obviously going to make a case where they're going to have like a back and forth, and they're going to argue over it. And and as a result of this, I really do believe that whatever comes out of this, right, may actually be just so ridiculously specific, or the final refined pattern has to be so specific, right, that it would really be a Pokemon specific pattern, right? Now, and to that effect, one of the great things that I do think that is going to come out of as a result of that is, strangely enough, one of two weird things. And once again, this is where I stand on it. One, we would have a framework to potentially protect games mechanically. And then number two, Nintendo's final filing of that patent becomes a guideline that we can actually use.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to wrap up by saying that I will concede, right, that there is a world or a future out there where, yes, this thing is implemented very well and it protects indies while not allowing corporations to abuse the laws in those specific ways. However, I'm usually a optimist, right? Anybody who knows me, anybody who has spoken to me in any length, knows that I am a die-hard optimist. But in this specific scenario, I unfortunately have to take the pessimistic route of, I don't think that corporations will wield this in good faith.
Right. So
because they have shown time and time again that they won't.
Right. So I want to get I really wish I could let you finish on that one. I really, really wish I too, but I really, really want to rebuke not what you're saying. I'm not saying that people won't abuse it. I'm saying, but I do want to put up a point there that where I at least feel that position, for the sake of the conversation, is problematic, right?
Okay.
Because what happens is that I was saying earlier that it comes from a place of bad faith. And I mentioned to you just now that, like, by that argument, no law matters, because you can always out-lawyer the other person to the point that no law applies. So the point I'm trying to get at here is that by that fallacy, right, then there is no point in trying to regulate. You get what I'm getting at?
Okay, so the rebuttal to that rebuttal.
So let me get really into it and very specifically go further down into it. It gets to this point, right, where as a result, the alternative to what you're suggesting becomes in a case, right, where basically the law is therefore defined or determined by the person with the deepest pockets. Now,
it is how it's going to work.
Now, that's what you say. But what happens is that more often than not, class action suits, civil suits, and like civil counterclaims against patent and copyright claims, and even trademark claims, are actually known to happen. Because very often, these are things where activist groups, for good reason, become the safeguard against such action. And very often, their filings, right, become the precedent that protects people beyond that. Now, this is something that actually happens against abuse from the civil side.
Let's real quick tap on that. Earlier, you mentioned that company that filed a suit against Elon Musk that went bankrupt and he had to drop the case. What's stopping that from happening to every future indie company who's trying to file a countersuit against a frivolous suit by a corporation?
Yeah. So
nothing.
So the short answer is nothing. You're right. So the short answer is nothing. The short answer is nothing. But
which means it's open to abuse by the person with the deepest pockets.
Dude, I know you're really passionate about this. Please don't hammer that one over and over again.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's. I know you're worked up over it. I know where you're coming from that one, but I do want to emphasize why it's a fallacy, because by that definition, right, no law can reasonably be put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's not a basis for conversation or discussion. You can talk about how it might be abused, but you cannot talk about how it's just abused. It's going to be abused definitively in such a way without specificity.
Which is why I started off, in an ideal scenario, I will happily take this I'll happily take this patent thing, setting a good precedent. Unfortunately, it just doesn't play that way.
No, but this is exactly where I'm coming from over and over again. You claim it, you claim to make that stance behind the a glass of like idealism, an argument that you're being a realist. The problem is that that argument implies that being a realist requires that everything is going to be abused with no way to push back. There's no way you can absolutely push back or punish these people for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my and basically and in that definition, right, that means, right, no matter what happens, there is no way for the law to function balanced. Basically, you either get abused by the law or you are lucky enough to not be abused by the law. You get what I'm getting at? Like, that's the stance that you're trying to take.
Okay.
You see what I'm getting at?
Maybe I just have a really jaded view of the law in a lot of different places, because it is being abused that way.
It is. I'm not saying you're wrong on that one. I'm not saying you're wrong for it. But I am saying, for the purposes of a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
for the purposes of a conversation, that stance is not helpful. And it's not practical. It's like saying
it's practical.
I'll give you a very brutal and very simple example. Okay, and
Okay.
I'm going to end it at that, and then I'll leave the rest of the comments to like decide on it, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna end it on this one. A very, very simple and brutal example, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of people on LinkedIn saying that employers abuse their employees.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, everyone thinks of that these days, and it's absolutely, like, it is very, very prevalent, right? Okay. If that is the case, why does anyone still work? Like, why does anyone still choose to work, or why does anyone even bother being an employer if they know that they are going to be viewed as the enemy all the time?
Because they need to eat. They need a roof over their heads.
Are you claiming that just because of that you should always view all your employers as an enemy?
No.
That's exactly my point.
That is going above and beyond.
No, but it's
most
actually,
people don't. That's why abuse in workplace happens.
most larger companies don't necessarily abuse the smaller boys. They do some, but not all. And most of the time, whenever employer abuse happens, there are activist groups that actually help and combat these larger employers. The power comes in finding a balance between the two. This is exactly the point I'm trying to get at here.
Absolutely. And I am for that point, where if they strike a balance, I am all for it.
Right.
I don't think they will.
No. It's not up to the employers to strike a balance. It is up to both sides to find the balance. That's the point I'm trying to get at. The system would find a balance on its own. The point and I'm trying to get at is to insist that it's always a bad thing is the point I'm trying to get at, which is wrong. That's the
But
fallacy.
I'm not insisting it's a bad thing. There is a world where it's a good thing. I just don't think it's probable.
I guess where I'm really trying to impress upon this side of the conversation is that the argument that whether it's probable, like insisting that it's not probable, it's itself flawed because of how often it's been proven to happen in everywhere else, in every other field.
I mean, the opposite can also be argued, where it's also been proven to be abused multiple ways.
Oh no. Yeah. And no, so what happens is it's always a case of abuse, find a way to counter abuse, find a way to counter, and we gradually improve to a better society that way. That's actually how a lot of things get iterated.
Yeah. And see, okay, part of the problem, right, is that there is an inherent power imbalance here, where corporations have the money right now to fight for all those things, whereas all the people they're fighting against, the indies, don't have that power to fight.
Yep.
So what ends up happening is that litigation is going to swing in the ways of the corporation, and as it continues, the power of indies to fight back gets further diminished and diminished and diminished.
So similarly, this is also why I brought up the employer-employee reference, because honestly, it's the same. More often than not, initially, employees don't have much power against their employers, and gradually, as they gather and the numbers grow, and people actually take interest and take concern over what has been happening, and there's a larger and better case for it, like there is a way to strike back. The law
Yes.
always works in this way.
But why take power out of the
Because
indie people's
no,
hands right
be-
now to do?
yeah, because the alternative right now, the standing alternative, which is the point I was trying to get earlier, is that the standing alternative right now, the status quo as it is right now, unfortunately, provides no protection. Yeah. So this is a thing that I was trying to impress, and I guess this didn't get through, is that to make this precedent, to set this precedent where protecting gameplay is possible, is going to be very, very expensive. And if two companies were going to dish it out where they need to formulate like a working structure for it, like basically you and I were having a debate over the philosophy of this to some level, and like if two companies were going to dish it out in a legal battlefield, right, to try and see whether they can hash out a framework, right, where gameplay can actively be protected, right? Honestly, strangely enough, and I think this is really what Nintendo is trying to do, is Nintendo and Pocket Pair. Because keep in mind, even if Nintendo wins this, the amount of money they're getting is actually pretty small. I know it's a lot of money for us individually, but it's pretty small considering how much Pocket Pair has earned, like for the whole thing.
Yeah, but you're not considering lawyer fees or anything like that.
Yeah, no. I will consider it, like as in, like most of the time, if you think about how much like Nintendo would have possibly asked for if they wanted Pocket Pair to not continue, like really punish Pocket Pair, would have been straight up like in the millions, because they would have just scaled it based on per unit sold. But it's not even that, right? This is really, really small numbers, right? So I think what
I mean, we had this conversation off stream where I had the very cynical take of they put it that low because they know if they went for the throat, firstly, widely unpopular.
Right.
Secondly, it would make Pocket Pair want to fight for it
Right.
more.
Right.
In a sum this minute to a company like Pocket Pair, it makes it so that they can just go, all right, have it.
Right. So, which is interestingly enough, is honestly,
and that sets bad precedent. If this, as the patents currently are, go through as they are, that sets very bad precedents. And you know it. You acknowledged it too.
Yeah, correct. So I agreed with you on that one. And this is going to be an interesting one to see how Pocket Pair replies. And as far as I can tell, Pocket Pair, at least based on their public statement, does not seem to be that they want to just concede to this. Nor do I think really that Pocket Pair should really concede to it. But as I alluded to as well, like this is actually an offline comment that I actually threw at you, which was very specifically that this was my guess, which is specifically Nintendo is trying to get a quick verdict so that, like, if Pocket Pair concedes it, they can then use this as a protection for every Pokemon game moving forward. Now, we've actually dragged on this one a little bit, and I think any other point that I try to make at this point will be rebutted, at least judging from your tone, based on like the bad faith from Nintendo.
Yes.
Which once again, I really, really want to emphasize, that is absolutely no way you can approach this thing, like in that way. But I want to emphasize the point I was trying to make earlier, that if two companies was to actually battle it out to create a baseline framework in which companies can potentially patent gameplays, it would be these two. Because considering how much money that Pocket Pair had earned, as well as, like, especially like the investments that Sony has done with Pocket Pair as well as Nintendo's own coffers, for obvious reasons, like these two companies battling it out, that piece of paper that comes out of it is going to be potentially a functional framework for us to for us to patent games. That's at least what I really, really look forward to actually seeing out of this lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own takes on it. I guess we'll see how it plays out in court. Chat, y'all give us your thoughts.
Yeah.
Very happy to read and listen to them.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm too cynical, too jaded.
Yeah.
And hey, tell me.
Yep. Well, okay, guys. Well, so yeah, that's it for us tonight. We've been here for about like 2.5 hours. For those who don't know, by the way, Luke, thank you very much for standing as long as you can. For those of you guys who don't know, Luke actually hasn't had dinner yet. So like I there's a part of me that's really appreciative that he's actually bothered himself, like just really sticking through like what essentially is 150 minutes of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun to talk about it, so I'm happy to, you know. So
we got a little heated in the back end there, and but for what it's worth, I do think for this conversation has been really healthy. I
yeah.
think I think this is a conversation that is much needed, because I really like, I know where a lot of people's thoughts are on this one, and I think a lot of people do share where Luke is coming from. That fear of litigation, it is something that like you're worried, especially when you're making stuff, that you have to constantly watch over your shoulder. I get it, I really do. But I think unfortunately it really is a weird thing where the risk is always there. It's just that you're not aware of it until now.
Yeah,
I think that's the way I really want to frame it. And now the only big difference now is that as the result of this whole thing, the way I see it at least, is going to be more visibility. And at least what I hope for this chat is that you gain a little bit more visibility also over your own rights and how some of these things are done. Well, I look forward to your comments your comments in the comments below.
Yeah.
Your responses to the comments below.
Join the conversation. I'll read everything.
Yeah.
And next time, maybe if there's any particularly interesting ones, I'll address them. or maybe concede. I was wrong. Y'all were right.
I really don't think that this is going to be that easy to tell.
I mean, at the end of it, right, it's gonna be, let's just wait and see what the courts decide, what the fallout from that is. Right? Maybe my cynicism is unfounded. Maybe your belief that the courts will protect the common man is unfounded. We'll find out.
I'm gonna go ahead and give you. I'm just gonna finish off in a little bit of the last nugget and let you know that, as we're working out all of these kind of things, I should probably flag out that companies that get caught in crossfire, like as people go through these kind of things, like we're talking about like advertising agencies and all this kind of stuff, right? Like I'll give you a quick example. The first murder trial must have been difficult. I think everyone needs to recognize that the first murder trial must have been difficult. You know?
Really? You killed somebody?
No, like as in, on one side, you want to make sure that the trials process protects anyone from being badly accused. Right? You don't want a witch trial, right?
Yeah, you don't want a false accusation.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So you need to be thorough. But the burden of evidence is going to be so frustrating that, like, for any normal person, you're just going to go like nani the F balls, right? Nani the punani all the way, right?
Yeah.
So it's always going to be tough. But to the people who the victims of a murderer and their, the people around them and all that kind of stuff, those who are directly affected, it's always going to be rough. It's always going to be tough. Now, I speak online here so far about how this is going to be good for protecting inventions, right? But make no mistake, there are going to be people who are going to be hurt in the process, right? How many? I can't tell. How clean or clear this entire process is going to be? No way on earth I will be able to tell. But I can only be certain that as it stands, there's a different sort of abuse that this can potentially help rectify. So that's at least where I'm coming from.
Yeah, so I can 100% see where you're coming from, right? I understand the reasonings to why you argue the points you do.
Thank you.
And yeah, I agree that there's absolutely a world where that's great and that's good. I just don't believe we're in that world.
All right. With that, I'm gonna call it a pause. We're gonna end here tonight. Thank you everyone who's been joining us for the last 150 minutes. This has been fantastic. If you like what we do, please like and subscribe to this channel. I'm very, very far from any form of monetization, but it would be nice to be able to afford a drink or two and maybe possibly feed Luke before he comes on to stream.
No, that's not even on you. That's just public
Like,
transport in
like
Singapore.
I
And
don't
2 hours
know.
to get
Like,
hooked.
I like the idea that this show might be able to afford Grab for you so that you can eat while you're on the show.
That would
You know,
be
I
fantastic.
know, right? So you see what I mean? So like, guys, hammer that like and subscribe. Drop a comment if you can. It'd be great. Share if you like what we're sharing. I know we've been very contentious about it. Not everyone's going to agree with us. If you don't agree with us, tell us why. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right. Till the next time. I'll see you guys around. Tatas for now. Good night,
Yep.
everyone.
See ya. Good night.